Welcome to UFHL Now! A close-up look at the ultimate fantasy hockey league. The most realistic fantasy gameplay. High stakes. High reward. Here's your host, the owner of Duckman's domination in the UFHL, and the mighty Mallards of the UFAHL, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome to the first edition of UFHL Now on this Friday, February 26th, 2021. Hope you're going to have a great weekend. I hope you've had a great week in fantasy, and for those in the UFHL, a special hello to you. This is what we will have on tap for this show. We're going to explain what is the UFHL. We're also going to tell you about the UFSN, your one-stop shop for fantasy. Monty Hall must be running this league because there are so many deals going on. We'll touch on what's happening with UFHL expansion. That wraps up on Monday. Our UFHL insider, Larry Fisher, will join us, and we'll get to the top 10 in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. If you would like to get in touch with us here at the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network on Twitter, we are at UFSN or UFS Network, and you can reach us through email at UFSN@UFFsports.com. So those are the different ways that indeed you can get in touch with us. You can also find Duckman's Domination, this beautiful jersey right there, created by the logo created by Chris Ianson. You can find us on Twitter at Ducks Domination. So that's kind of what we have lined up for you here on the program. So without further ado, let's get into the first episode with the nuts and bolts.
You're watching the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, UFSN, your one-stop fantasy shop. Get in touch on Twitter at UFS Network. Email us, UFSN@UFFsports.com.
All right, to start things off, let's tell you a little bit about what the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League is if you are very new to this platform. We are under the UFFS umbrella, Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, and the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League is one league. We also have the UFAHL, a very cool brand from the UFAHL that we'll tell you about a little bit later, was revealed yesterday. So we mimic just about everything that the NHL does. The only difference is our draft is an auction. We have a scouting program where players are auctioned. So instead of drafting, you're bidding on players, and that's why our prize pool is nearly $50K. This is high stakes, high reward, and these are digital assets. So this is what makes the UFHL unique and more rare than anything else, and more cool than anything else. Like, I'm in several fantasy leagues, Yahoo, CBS, ESPN, a couple $100, you play your game, you sign your contracts, whatever. This league, you own the game. These are digital assets on the blockchain. You can buy and sell them. As a scout, you can make a lot of money. It's amazing. It is the future of fantasy, and I would love for you to reach out to us at UFH League on Twitter, and you can find out all the details. You can also reach us here on UFSN as well. But this is UFHL Now, where we tell you about the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. And while telling you that, I need to explain what the UFSN is. It's the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. This show, Tracking the Draft with Craig Button, Fantasy Fun Time, the UFFS podcast, 2-Minute Tuesdays. You'll find it all here, even branding for teams. We want to be your one-stop fantasy shop. You can follow us on Twitter at UFS Network. And if you're wanting to get involved, if you have a show, if you'd like to pitch a show to us to join the network, send us an email, UFSN at UFFsports.com. You'll see it running down below in the ticker as well. You can get some information that we're talking about through there, so you can pause the program at any point. So we are going to be building this network as we go. We're starting small, and we will be expanding very, very shortly. But we are going to be talking about a lot about fantasy sports, and we'll be talking about the specifics of this league as well. And you know, the amazing thing about this league is there's always something going on, whether it's scouts that are listing players or it's trades that are happening. You'll hear from our UFHL insider a little bit later on about the amount of trades that have happened just in the last week. It's unbelievable. Our community is based on Telegram, and there's chat rooms and everything going on. That's how you work out deals. I mean, I'm in a long-term CBS fantasy hockey league. I have had this week to text 2 different owners to say, hey, I made you a trade offer. Why? Because it's a weekly lineup, first of all. Once you set your lineup on Monday, there's no bother checking again. There's no engagement. This league has buy-in from almost everybody. The engagement is there. And if somebody buys a team, they hire a GM to run their team if they don't have hockey knowledge. Because in the grand scheme of things, the fantasy gameplay is awesome, but most of the people are on, the blockchain and cryptocurrency as an investment. So this is kind of like being able to play with your investment. You're using the fantasy gameplay, which is ultra realistic, and there's so many big things on the way. But you're also watching franchise values go up. We'll tell you about the expansion draft in just a second and where that is, and that's why it's big stakes, but it's also a big reward. And that leads to a lot of movement, a lot of trades, a lot of trade talk. Just this morning, I started chatting with somebody about a very, very studly young defenseman. There's always something going on. So join the league. The best thing to do is hit up on Twitter at UFH League, or you can send us an email here and we can put you in touch with the right people, UFSN at UFFsports.com. But you should get in the game where you literally own the game. And there is a way to do that right now. We are having an expansion draft that closes on Monday. This is the website that we're using, auctioneer.com. And as we will scroll down and then check on where the auction is, and we are sitting at a lot of cake, in my opinion, for sure. I mean, when the average sale price was about $1,500, around there, we are sitting at $2,550. That is awesome. A number of bids have come in. The leading bidder right now is Brennan Kopp, who's also been on our Instagram chats. So good luck to Brennan, Bartlett too. They've had a bit of a bidding war going back and forth. So it's going to be interesting to see how frantic things get on Monday. Now, this auction closes at 6 p.m. Eastern. And the cool thing is, we are going to have a live show based around this right here on UFSN. Darren Bates, Larry Fisher, myself, and some very special guests an hour before. So 5 p.m. Eastern, we'll be here on UFSN leading up to the auction, watching the bids heat up and see who goes home with that 30-second franchise. I don't know when there's going to be expansion again. You might be able to buy a team here and there down the road. I have no idea when the NHL plans on expanding again. So this is be your last chance to kind of get in as, one of the 32. So that closes at Monday, March 1st, 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll be on the air an hour before that right here on UFSN. So as for the actual league play, I've been telling you a lot about, the peripheral stuff, but here's what's going down in our league right now in the UFHL. And we have a dandy, absolute dandy of a race for top spot. Red Army, number 1 right now. And by the way, I absolutely love the name. I was a huge fan of the Russian 5 in the 80s. So I would love to get a Red Army jersey at some point. I think I'll be ordering one off the UFHL merchandise shop. So Red Army leading the way. They have just a slim 6.15 lead over the Yetis. The Ice Vikings, not too far away, and the Titans rounding out the top 4. 3 teams within 20 points. That is ultra tight in the UFHL. Drops off a little bit after that with the Royals, the Rock Republic, Outlaws, Grizzlies, Blades of Steel, and the Gators rounding out the top 10. But a real tight top finish or fight right now for the top spot. After that, you're getting into 100, 200 points for some teams back. Not to say that teams like Battlehawks and the Stingrays, West Coast Express, etc., any of those teams can get in it. When you look down at the playoff cutoff, you've got quite a bit of a gap between 16 and 17 between the Stallions and the Mystics and Elite Assassins. So, maybe some of these teams get some injured players back, or another team unfortunately suffers an injury and you can close the gap. But I'd be pretty comfortable if I'm in the top 16 right now. Not that I would be wanting to be resting on my laurels if I'm the Stallions or Strong Island or anything like that, or the Brutes. But I'd feel comfortable as long as my team continues to kind of perform at a high level, that I would be able to hold on to a playoff spot. So we'll see what happens. Certainly when you look at this roster of Red Army that is leading the charge right now, pretty impressive roster of superstars and young players. Even you look at a guy like Jesse Puljujarvi. A lot of people wrote that guy off here in Edmonton. Now he comes back, and he just happens to be on the line with the best player in the game, and he's starting to perform. George Steinbrenner, who a.k.a. Luke, who runs Red Army, has done just a bang-up job of putting together a championship roster. And with this being, probably the biggest payout that we're going to have, it's actually pretty smart. So it's a bit of a look at what's going on in the UFHL from a top 10 perspective. And we'll be taking and featuring, different teams throughout the season and things like that. And, spotlighting different things. And, the next few episodes, we'll kind of get into the actual, fantasy, what's been happening. We're going to do a lot of that with our insider, Larry Fisher, in a little bit as well. So some really good stuff coming your way with that. But before we get into our insider, I want to give you a look at what happened yesterday with a UFAHL team, a rebrand by Charisse in the UFHL, and it is absolutely unbelievable. So let me introduce to you, if you missed it earlier, get rid of the ticker for this one because we want to give all the attention. I introduce you to the Puck Pirates. brilliant work right there. Absolutely awesome. To be able to come up with stuff like that, that's what I love about this league in general, is the absolute cool creativity. So congratulations to the Puck Pirates. My favorite is Paulie won a trophy. That is such a great, Davy Jones locker, all the great pirate things. Just brilliant stuff. Terrific work for whoever put that together. So good stuff, Charisse. I really appreciate that. And we're going to be featuring all types of things like this here on UFHL Now and even more. We have Duckman's Domination. We are the Mighty Mallards in the UFAHL, and we're working on our unveiling of our brand and our logo with that as well. So really cool stuff there from the Puck Pirates of the UFAHL. All right, time now to bring in my good friend. You know him as the hardest working man on UFFS. It's time for the UFHL Insider segment with Larry Fisher.
Time to get the scoop on the UFHL with our insider, Larry Fisher. He's had lines in the water all week long. What will he reel in for us today? Let's dive in and find out what's going on with the UFHL now.
I am very excited about this segment. I bring in our UFHL insider, Larry Fisher, who does so much work also behind the scenes with this platform. But Larry, I'm excited about the maiden voyage for UFHL Now and the insider segment, because I know you've got some good stuff for us. But before we get to all the tidbits and news and notes and breaking stories that you're going to have, we should mention there is a massive event concluding on Monday with the expansion franchise auction for the UFHL.
Yeah, that's coming up fast, and the bidding war is heating up. We're above 2,500 USD, US dollars is the top bid. So it's exciting to see the bidding war heating up, and certainly the package that they're going to get with the UFHL expansion franchise, and be able to live simultaneously with NHL Seattle Kraken throughout the entire expansion process. I think the winning bidder gets a great package, and it's going to be intense come Monday afternoon to see how that auction shakes down.
Indeed, it is going to be really awesome to watch that. We're going to be live on UFSN, Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, an hour before the auction closes. We've got some special guests lined up, yourself, Darren, and me. It's like Darren, Larry, and Dean. It's like a Newhart joke in there somewhere, I think. But we're going to be live on the air, taking right up to that and beyond. And I'm excited to see the bidding. If the one thing I was thinking about with this is that when we're bidding on players, we know most of the time there's another player coming up that we can bid on. In this situation, this is it. When is the NHL expanding again? I don't know if they will for a really long time. So this is it. And that's what makes this so unique and so rare, as opposed to, when I lost out on Hendrix Lapierre this year in the draft, well, I ended up with Connor Zary. It's a good consolation prize. There's no consolation prize in this. It's winner take all.
It is. I mean, technically all 31 or now 32 franchises will be for sale at all times on the platform. But in saying that, this is the last chance to be an original franchise owner in the UFHL. And again, just that the whole allure of being part of the expansion draft with the exact same rules as NHL Seattle, the exact same timeline. A lot of people want to, do a lot of mock drafts and stuff, but this is your chance to really harness that and build your own team from the ground up, which Duckman's Domination got to do through the UFHL redraft in July. The original franchises got to do it in the inaugural draft in January 2020. And this is the last franchise that will get to pick their own players through the expansion draft. So you're right. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for somebody to come in and be part of an expansion draft in a fantasy hockey league.
All right, let's get some of the stories that we're going to be talking about in the behind-the-scenes notes that you have. And there's some really good work being done by some of the franchises. I'm really impressed with the work that, Xavier Smith and Dynasty have done to take what was a tough roster and turn that around. I've been really impressed. But you're focusing on what Kamikaze has done. And, man, they've been busy.
Yeah, it's been Donnie Talk, obviously left the Rock Republic ownership group prior to the season, purchased the Kamikaze franchise, and really went into rebuild mode, traded away a lot of the NHL talent for really high-end prospects. And it looked like, okay, Donnie's in next year mode or a couple years down the road mode. And he sort of flipped that switch to start February. He's made 7 trades so far in the month of February, acquiring 10 NHL players. And I mean, we're talking some big names like Jamie Benn, Ryan Strome, Jake Virtanen, Lawson Krause, Frank Vetrano. The list goes on. He's Sam Bennett's another guy who has some upside. Obviously, he's got a lot of guys that are maybe having a bit of a down year, but NHL quality players who are first-round picks. And he's really piecing that roster together from basically a waiver wire scrap heap that he was icing to now, upgrading all those roster spots into actual NHL talent. And I think what Donnie's doing there is he's trying to play his way out of that lottery. And so far, so good. It's looking like he could challenge for the top 20. And I think the reason he's doing that is because a bit of a chip on the shoulder, perhaps, because Terry Weber, the owner of Strong Island, previously acquired that first-round pick from the previous owner of the Kamikaze franchise. And Terry Weber has been putting it on the trade block repeatedly as the owner of Strong Island, touting it as this is going to be a chance to, draft Owen Power or whoever you have first overall in the 2021 NHL draft. This is a pick you want to acquire as an asset for him to upgrade his current roster. And I think Donnie took that personally, saying, you know what, I'm going to play my way out of that bottom 5. And again, little rivalries within the league, but I definitely think Kamikaze, I wouldn't say they're in win now mode, but they're becoming competitive, and he's doing a lot to improve that roster in the present after retooling for the future.
That is some pretty impressive work. I love the chip on the shoulder kind of aspect and that kind of motivation to get out of the lottery, and that's good because we need all the room in the lottery for Duckman's domination, because we're definitely going to be a lottery team.
Yeah, well, you never know. Duckman's could have some moves up their sleeve too. Believe it or not, I'm hearing rumblings. The trade rumor mill is churning, but I've heard potential blockbuster in the works between Duckmans and the Generals. Names are flying around. I've heard Patrick Laine, obviously a big name, Tyler Seguin, two of the guys that the Generals seem to be building around. They could be out there in trade talks, and Duckmans might be one of the franchises sniffing around on Patrick Laine and or Tyler Seguin. And obviously, you look at Duckmans, they have some young, talented guys like Dante Fabro and Nolan Patrick that could potentially reel in a guy like a Patrick Laine or perhaps Tyler Seguin as well.
Well, it's weird. I don't see this on the notes that we're prepared for this, so this is a little bit of a news to me. I will tell you there were some talks at one point. I'm not sure if they've cooled off. At one point, we were thinking of fast tracking. So certainly, I'm going to have to speak to Craig and Trish and George and find out who is passing on some of this information. We might have to go into like what the Arizona Coyotes tried to do and make everybody sign something that they're not allowed to reveal information to guys like Larry Fisher.
There could be a bit of a leak there in the marsh. It's interesting, but again, big names are floating around the league all around. Another name to monitor, Evgeny Malkin, formerly a member of Duckman's domination, was part of the transition from Duckman's redraft roster into more of a rebuilding. Obviously got some first-round picks for Evgeny Malkin. He ended up with the mighty Red Army, one of the contenders for first overall, but his name's been sort of floated out there as well as somebody who's off to a slow start this season. And, I'm not saying he's necessarily available or being shopped in the present. He's not on the trade block, but if something happened with Evgeny Malkin between now and the April 12th trade deadline, just remember you heard it here first on UFHL Now.
Awesome. Never a dull moment in the UFHL, and that is true for the amount of trades. There is almost constantly players being listed by scouts, and lately there is almost as many trade emails going out. I mean, if this was the olden days without computer, we'd be chopping down forests for the amount of trades that you have to write out.
Yeah, it's busy. Like you said, never a dull moment in the UFHL. I think we've had 13 trades since last Friday. And again, you see, these aren't just small trades. These are blockbuster trades. A guy like Phil Kessel, along with Jake Bean, who's having a hot start with Carolina now that he's finally got the opportunity. But Kessel, Jake Bean, and upcoming prospect Bobby Brink were traded from the Gators to the Battlehawks for William Karlsson and Jansen Harkins. So that was a blockbuster. I think part of the situation there is, moving Kessel's contract, which is a no-move clause and pretty hefty cap hit for maybe a better contract in William Karlsson, but to have to pay the price of Jake Bean and Bobby Brink, that's pretty steep as well. But that was a big trade. You look at a lot of franchises that are in that playoff race, and again, much like Kamikaze, when you look at the way the payouts work in the UFHL, every team gets a piece of the pie on a sliding scale. So if you finish 20th instead of 25th, you're making a substantially more payout. And if you finish 10th instead of 15th, likewise there. So you're seeing teams or franchises like the Brutes go out and acquire a couple of Chicago's forwards, Matthias Janmark and Carl Soderberg, for futures. They gave up picks and prospects for players that can help them now. So I think around the league, there's been a lot of movement. And again, that arms race on top. And I mentioned Evgeny Malkin. I have a hard time imagining that the silent partner would allow the Red Army to move their Russian captain, Evgeny Malkin. But you look right there at the top of the standings, the Ice Vikings just made another blockbuster trade this week to land Dustin Brown. Alex Edler, one of the guys going the other way, but Ice Vikings are right there in that arms race for first place. And actually on Thursday night, at one point, there was a three-way tie for first place this far into the season, which is pretty remarkable, between the Yetis, Red Army, and the Ice Vikings. So the Ice Vikings, get that little bit of extra firepower from Dustin Brown, who's really turned into his old self this season. He's been a huge contributor for the Los Angeles Kings, and certainly in the scoring system in the UFHL, he's a beast with the amount of hits and shots he gets. So you look at what the Ice Vikings did, and now what's Red Army and potentially the Yetis going to do to counter that, to give themselves that another little boost between now and the April 12th trade deadline.
Yeah, and Dustin Brown, I mean, this guy he's like Rocky. People count him out, and he keeps coming back. I mean, I first met this guy at a CHL Top Prospects game in Red Deer when he came in, and I'm like, wow, this guy has a pretty good package as far as the five-tool player, and especially in fantasy. Here we are all these years later. The guy has been counted out, and he keeps going. And you're right. If you're just focusing on points while the scoring system is weighted, you're I don't know, you're going to be lacking in so many other areas. So those all-around players that people might not think are all-stars are really, really important in the UFHL as far as, all-around fantasy categories.
That's so true. And everybody has value in a number of categories. And Dustin Brown's an interesting story because in the offseason, he was a guy that was considered an anchor of a contract, a bad contract, couldn't give him away, or you had to package an asset to get rid of him. And Dynasty, Xavier Smith and Brian Hernandez, his scout, they're from Los Angeles. They're Kings fans, and they took a chance on Dustin Brown, getting him for a flyer basically back in the offseason. And now look what they turned him into. The return with Alex Edler and three other players, including young guys with some upside like Trent Frederick and Tyler Pitlick and Nico Sturm, forwards that could potentially play for Dynasty, as well as Alex Edler on the point, and some cash considerations there. So what they gave up to get Dustin Brown and what they got in return, that's some tidy work by the Dynasty front office. As you said, that was a team that was predicted to be at the bottom of the standings and took over a really decimated roster from the previous owner and had an uphill battle, and they've really made a number of smart moves, and maybe selling high on Dustin Brown is another one of those moves if some of those players they got back turn into roster regulars for Dynasty in the years to come.
Interesting situation with their goaltending, though, as far as the amount of money that's tied up for Dynasty.
Yeah, that was the latest big blockbuster there on Thursday was they acquired Mikko Koskinen in goal. They gave up Vitek Vanacek, who's been, again, perhaps selling high on him, but he's been a real revelation in Washington. Everybody thought Ilya Samsonov was the goalie of the future in Washington, but Vitek Vanacek has been standing on his head all season, and Dynasty was riding that success there to get a lot of fantasy points. But again, you identify Koskinen as a guy who has maybe more proven track record than Vitek Vanacek, and they made that trade bringing in Koskinen. But like I said, you look at that cap situation, they already had the $10 million man in Sergei Bobrovsky between the net. You get Mikko Koskinen, who's at $4.5 million. That's almost $15 million in net in goal. And you look at the salary cap, $81.5 million. You could do the math. That's pushing close to 20% of your cap space in goaltending. So they have to hope that Mikko Koskinen wrestles that job back from Mike Smith and really becomes a go-to guy for Edmonton as well. But you look at that trade as a whole, all the parts that were exchanged, and Dynasty did well there too. It was a big blockbuster. I guess they took on the Mikko Koskinen contract, but in exchange, they were able to dump the David Savard salary cap hit. So that's a bit of a wash, but they got guys like Tyler Madden, who has a lot of upside, Yakov Trenin, who was just a bidding war on the waiver wire, sold for over 100 USD as a waiver wire pickup. They got him tossed in that deal, as well as Jake Evans and Jacob Bryson. So I look at that deal. I think Tyler Madden has some nice upside. I think Vancouver gave up on him a little early, and maybe the Royals did as well. But the Royals getting back Vitek Vanacek as somebody who's having a really strong season in goal and starting regularly for Washington. Royals are a top 10 franchise, pushing higher in the money. So they get a guy who's hot right now. They get the hot hand in Vitek Vanacek in exchange for a guy who's stuck behind the hot hand, Mikko Koskinen, behind Mike Smith in Edmonton right now, coming off a shutout last night in Vancouver.
Yeah, we talk often, Larry, about having to look ahead and find out when, your RFAs are coming up for a big deal or even a UFA and what's going to happen with that, because the salary cap in this league is so important. We mimic pretty much everything about the NHL right down to the salary cap. And, there are some teams with a lot of salary cap right here, and then there are some teams with like nickels and dimes left in salary cap, it seems.
Yeah, literally nickels and dimes when you look at the Battlehawks. They're down to $7,143 in cap space, less than 10 grand. So I mean, in the $81.5 million cap world, under $10,000 left is certainly nickel and diming it. But talk about maximizing your cap space. But again, an injury here or there, and you could be in a tough spot as well when you're pushing it that close. But you're right. It's no longer a seller's market necessarily, because a lot of the franchises that are playoff bound, those buyers are close to the salary cap. You take a look, 4 franchises have less than $1 million in cap space. 8 franchises have less than $2 million, and 15 franchises have less than $3 million in cap space. So essentially half the league is within $3 million of the cap ceiling. And we do mimic the ceiling and the floor. So the sellers also have to stay above the floor. So the fact that many teams are that close to the cap tells you they're going to have to get awfully creative to upgrade and bolster the roster anymore between today on February 26th and that trade deadline that's not that far away on April 12th.
Well, and that's where franchises with a lot of cap space can take on some of those contracts with some sweetener. And I'll tell you, Duckman's Domination will be right there waiting to greet some big contracts near the trade deadline if teams are moving and shuffling. And then that kind of brings us to, what guys are out there. We mentioned some of the potential deals and maybe some Gino Malkin trade speculation. But what's going on with the UFHL trade board right now?
Yeah, I think guys like Patrick Laine, Tyler Seguin, Evgeny Malkin, those are sort of behind the scenes. They're not necessarily names that are broadcast as come get them, they're available. But when you're talking about guys that are available, Cam Atkinson has been red hot for Columbus. The Stingrays are potentially looking to capitalize on his hot hand. They've been, throwing his name out there a couple times in the last week, especially he was one of the NHL's 3 stars last week. Like I said, a guy who's riding a real hot streak and just seeing what they could get for him. A surprising name that came out on Thursday was Travis Konechny of the Blizzard. The Blizzard were building around Konechny and Capo Caco, and all of a sudden Travis Konechny could be on the move within the next 24 hours. So obviously Dylan Wheaton got a sweet offer there for the Blizzard, and Travis Konechny, who also are dangling a guy like Max Domi. They're sort of in rebuild mode, the Blizzard. So some teams that want to upgrade are probably knocking on their door because they have some nice assets. And those two, Konechny and Domi, are out there. You look at the Elite Assassins. Again, Columbus forwards seem to be out there. I mentioned Cam Atkinson with the Stingrays. Elite Assassins have been mentioning Nick Foligno. They've been dropping his name on a fairly regular basis on the trade board, and certainly a team that's looking to upgrade, similar to a Dustin Brown type guy who hits a lot of categories, plays special teams. Obviously is a physical guy, gets some penalty minutes, lots of hits, lots of shots. So a guy who fits well in this scoring system, but again, comes at a pretty big cap hit that is above that $3 million that most teams can't take on. So they have to get creative with what they send back. And then I mentioned the Yetis, and we've talked about Ice Vikings bringing in Dustin Brown. We've talked about the Red Army potentially entertaining offers or potentially looking at making an offer involving Evgeny Malkin. And then you look at the Yetis, who are right on top, but they've lost Artemi Panarin in that off-ice incident or off-ice situation. He's taken a leave of absence from the Rangers, and the Yetis, I think, aren't real happy with the production they're getting from Anthony Mantha. So his name's been out there, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Yetis look to upgrade Anthony Mantha, especially with Artemi Panarin sideline. They do have Connor McDavid and Mitch Marner and Brock Besser, so they're not hurting for offense, but I think the Yetis would like to upgrade Anthony Mantha for somebody who's got more of a hot hand right now, perhaps a guy like a Cam Atkinson. And you look down the list, we mentioned the cap space, and I think that's why some of these teams that are outside looking into the playoff race, they held on to their expensive contracts perhaps just a little bit too long. But I look at the Mystics, they've been dangling Claude Giroux, Sean Monahan, and Matt Zuccarello, another guy who's back in the lineup and has started hot for Minnesota. Good chemistry with their young rookie, Kirill Kaprizov. And then you look at the North Stars, and they've sort of had these guys on the trade block all year, and they are hefty contracts that are hard to move. Ryan Johansson up front, a guy who doesn't bring a lot of those extra categories. He's a playmaker. He gets a lot of assists, but he doesn't do a lot of that hitting and shooting and that's kind of contributions, as well as their two big contracts on defense, Ryan Suter and Erik Karlsson. They would love to move one or both of Suter and Karlsson, but no different than Minnesota with Suter and San Jose with Karlsson in the NHL. That's easier said than done in a cap world.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, there was something pretty cool in the UFAHL tonight, an unveiling of the Puck Pirates franchise, and I just love all the branding that is going on and some of the unveiling. And we have, I think, a pretty cool shoulder patch, the Double D. There's some really cool ones. I heard a rumor. I'm not sure, and this will maybe take some investigating, but I heard George Steinbrenner for Red Army was looking at a new shoulder patch, and they were going to go with the number 19 as their shoulder patch because they seem to be focused on the number 19 as quite of their motivation. So not sure if that's going to happen. We'll see what George Steinbrenner, aka Luke, likes to go with, but I think 19 would be a beautiful shoulder patch for Red Army because it seems to be motivating them to the top of the charts where we all expected them to be.
Absolutely. The number 19 has become synonymous with the Red Army. Going back to December 1st, the UFHL put out a preseason power rankings, and we asked the franchises to submit their rankings of how they see the competition stacking up. And we had about a third of the franchise, I think 11 or 12, submitted their power rankings. And the reason Red Army wasn't on top or close to the top was because one of the submissions had them at 19th in the power rankings. And by and large, they were a top 5 franchise from the rest of the submissions, but that 19th overall in the power rankings has been a motivating factor for the Red Army, and Luc Grenier has certainly become attached to the number 19, so it would look good right there on the shoulder of the Red Army jersey.
Awesome stuff, Larry. Great maiden voyage of UFHL Now and you joining us as the UFHL Insider. I look forward to joining you and Darren on Monday when we auction off that franchise, and then we'll chat again next week. Thanks very much.
Yeah, sounds good, Dean. Appreciate you having me on and looking forward to seeing what we can dig up between now and next Friday.
This is UFHL Now with Dean Millard. Get in the game, where you own the game.
that was a really, really fun segment. And, you know, it helps when you're dealing with a walking encyclopedia, as Larry Fisher is. You know, the guy knows his stuff. He's connected with this league especially, and he'll be digging up stuff like he dug up about Duckman's domination and some trade talks we had a while back on your team every once in a while. And you might do, I almost spit my tea out when he mentioned that. So anyway, a lot of fun with Larry. And we're going to have a lot of fun. I love having fun with Luke and Red Army and Steinbrenner. That's his nickname. I love the 19 patch. So it's all in good fun. I hope all the owners take it all as in good fun as well. As really, one of the best parts about fantasy sports is chirping your buddies. And I think, while we might not all get along, just like in the NHL, I don't think all the owners in the NHL get along either. So it's a great community and a great ecosystem. And if you're not in it yet, you should check it out. Head up on Twitter at UFH League, and you'll be able to get a response there. Or you can email us here, UFSN at UFFsports.com, and we can put you in the right direction. Okay, so we have a special show on Monday. 5 p.m. Eastern, an hour before the auction closes. And you can get the link at the bottom of our ticker as it's been scrolling past to find out how you can bid on a team at Air Auctioneer. So 5 o'clock, Darren, Larry, and myself, along with some special guests, right here on UFSN. We will take you up right through the heated bidding and find out who is joining the UFHL as a second franchise. Fantasy Hockey Time will come out Monday mornings with myself, recapping the fantasy week, looking ahead to the week that is, tracking the draft with Craig Button, who is obviously the director of scouting for TSN. He's also the president of scouting for high-level scouting here in the UFHL and UFAHL. And we will have UFHL Now Friday afternoons right here on the network. And that is going to wrap things up for our maiden voyage. Big thanks to Larry Fisher for joining us on the program, bringing us the inside goods when it comes to the UFHL. Thank you for watching, and please tune in to UFSN for more great fantasy programming right here. Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy shop. Reminder, the UFHL auction comes your way on Monday, closes at 6 p.m. Eastern. Again, the website, Air Auctioneer, has been scrolling along the ticker below me, so you can get that and get some information. Thanks very much, everybody. Have yourself a wonderful weekend.
UFHL Now is produced by DM Productions. To get in touch, head to www.podcastalley.ca.